I live in the UK, and a few years ago I sold up, took early retirement, bought a boat, and dropped out to go on an adventure, exploring the UK's inland waterways. I don't have a mooring through choice. The whole reason I bought a boat was to get out and explore, and doing this has taken me to some really interesting places that I wouldn't have thought of visiting otherwise. I visited some urban and really lively areas, like Liverpool, but also spent time out in the sticks away from everything in extremely rural and peaceful spots. It's pretty cool being able to choose your spot dependent on your mood, and if you don't like the area or don't like your neighbors, you can just throw your ropes and move. In the UK, your waterways license enables you to boat without having to take a formal marina berth, provided you genuinely keep moving, with most mooring spots being free for up to 14 days before you have to move. This is called constant cruising, and out on the network, there are regular facility points to help you, like water, else on disposal, garbage disposal, along with boatyards and marinas, selling fuel and whatever else you might need, provided you can find a postcode or zip code, as people in America will know it. You can even get a supermarket or fast food outlet to deliver to you. So all in all, if you have a decent craft, well set up for off-grid living, you're very well catered for, and it's an amazing way of life. Many people choose this way as they're retired and on an adventure like me, but there are many living on pretty shady unlicensed boats out on the network because they can't afford anything else. You definitely can't judge a book by its cover though, and some of the most genuine, kindest people I've met out here have been people I'd have crossed the street to avoid in my previous narrow-minded life. There's people living gloriously happy, hippie lives in their torn jumpers and run-down barges who you'd be stunned to learn were former professors, physicists, lawyers, or high-ranking soldiers. And then there are those who look like hobos with absolutely nothing, but who'd give you the shirt off their back if they thought you needed it more than they did. I'm a lone female boater, with just my bog snorkeling Springer Spaniel and my 2 cats as crew. So I follow lots of boating forums to keep an ear out for problem areas or people, and try to be sensible with my safety and security, and my choice of stopping points. I've been very lucky so far. It's been very rare that I've ever had any sort of issue in those years I've been doing this, but occasionally you'll find that you've got little choice about where you have to stop, or how long for. In wintertime, you can often come across navigations closed due to flooding or broken infrastructure, like a broken lock stopping you in your tracks. In summer, it's not unheard of for a canal to run out of water, and you find yourself stuck on the bottom, unable to move, until the level rises again. As I'm writing this, I'm stranded on a quarter-mile stretch of canal with river navigations at either end closed due to flooding, and I've been here for 2 months. It's not been any hardship though, as there's lovely trails through a country park beginning right opposite me. There's a town with all its facilities 10 minutes walk away, and a water and facilities block nearby. As far as being stuck goes, this is an ideal spot, and I'm well set up. My cats like to go out and explore, so I always try to moor away from roads and seek out spots where the cats would have an escape route, so any pursuing dogs wouldn't be able to follow them, like a thick hedge or fenced-off area of some kind. So I choose a spot right up at the end of this canal, alongside a derelict industrial area. There's a couple of gaps in steel fencing a person can get through, and after checking it out to make sure it's reasonably safe, and finding mostly just piles of bricks and a usable but deteriorated roadway left, I've been in there often with the dog and cats, on a sniffari trotting behind. In the 2 months I've been here, I've only ever seen one other person in there, also walking their dog. My cats have discovered there's mice in there, and they've been having way too much fun to come home as often as they usually do. So it's become a nightly ritual to have to go in with my head torch and dog and retrieve them before bed. They're both pretty cool cats that think they're dogs, so if you just go and shout for them, they'll come running and follow you home. The first 7 weeks went without any incident, despite there being quite a few shady-looking boats here. But a few nights ago, I was in there shouting for one of the cats when I heard what sounded like bricks being bashed together in very deliberate, evenly spaced multiples of 3. My first thought was someone's hurt and maybe can't call out, so they're trying to get my attention. So I stopped and listened. Another 3 bashes came, but this time nearer. Okay, someone's moving and definitely not stuck. So I pick the pace up and think this is just weird. It's 11 p.m., pitch black in here, and below 0 with ice everywhere. There's no shelter, just piles of bricks, so why would anyone be in here on a freezing night like this? My cat comes bounding up at this point, so I just scoop her up and practically run back towards the fence. Another 3 bashes, the first one really loud and heavily emphasized, and again, all very deliberate and evenly spaced, but this time nearer again. I moved quite a distance and turned a corner by this point, but the noises followed and switched sides, like they'd cut the corner and almost caught me up. For anyone who's ever had a Springer Spaniel, you'll know they're definitely not known for being guard dogs. They're more likely to roll over for a belly rub than even bark, so taking no chances with the safety of any of us, I get us all through the fence and back on the boat, locking it all down and grabbing a fire poker. For about 10 minutes, I don't hear anything but the fluffs do, but they keep lifting their heads and alerting to something outside. Then I do hear it. The fence to this compound is only about 10 feet from the side of my boat, and someone is on the other side of the fence, doing a low but loud growling. If you can imagine a human trying to mimic the sound of a slow revving motorbike, it kinda sounded like that, and this went on for nearly 10 minutes. I turned all my lights off and sat up for hours holding my fire poker and watching my crew for any indication they could hear anything, but there was nothing further, and I eventually fell asleep. 2 days later, I'm walking down the towpath and walked past a small cruiser moored about 200 yards away from me. It's one of a line of pretty scrappy-looking boats with broken windows and junk piled all over it. As I pass, I hear a man's deep voice mimicking me, calling my cat's name like I was doing that night. I look over and see a really scruffy and dirty-looking guy with dark hooded eyes and god-awful teeth grinning at me. I stopped a second and gave him my best defiant, "I'm not scared of you, don't mess with me," because I'm secretly a badass death stare. I even managed a sly, psycho-esque grin of my own right back at him before walking off. I don't know why I reacted like this. Generally, any challenge to someone who might be unbalanced is a very dangerous thing to do and wouldn't be my usual approach. I'm not a badass, far from it, and I am scared of him. He looks mentally ill at best, possessed at worst. But there, in that moment, I just instinctively felt the need to stare him down and not show him fear. I'm still stuck here, but I haven't seen him since. In fact, in the 2 months I've been here, that's the only time I've clapped eyes on him at all, despite walking past that boat every other day. I hope to keep it that way, and as soon as those navigation lights change to signify the river is open again, my fuzzy crew and I are out of here. To the possessed-looking, growling guy, I hope your boat is as clapped out as it looks, so you won't be able to follow. This happened last fall in the Allegheny National Forest in Pennsylvania. It's not the kind of story with a big monster or jump scares. It's worse than that. There were 4 of us. Me, my girlfriend Rachel, my best friend Colin, and his cousin Jonah. We were doing a weekend hike in Camp Loop, 40 miles over 3 days. It was a late October trip, so chilly but still clear. Jonah was the quiet one, kind of weird, honestly. Not in a bad way, just introverted. He worked some IT job from home, didn't say much, barely looked up from his boots when he walked, but he was a beast on the trail. He could outpace all of us. On the first afternoon, Jonah asked if he could hike ahead to clear his mind. That wasn't unusual for him. We all agreed to meet at a designated spot, an open clearing about 10 miles in, near an old fire watchtower that's been out of use since the 90s. Rachel and I got there around 4:30 p.m. Colin showed up 20 minutes later. Jonah didn't. At first we weren't worried. We figured he got turned around, maybe stopped for a break. By 7 p.m. it was dark, and we started to panic. We shouted for him. Colin went a half-mile back down the trail with a flashlight. Nothing. By 9 p.m., we had no choice. We built a fire and stayed put, hoping he'd show up. He didn't. The next morning, we hiked out early and called for help once we got to a ranger station with service. Search and rescue was deployed. Dogs, drones. They found nothing. No tracks, no gear. No sign Jonah had ever been on the trail past the first 3 miles. It was like he vanished between 2 blinks. We went home 2 days later, wrecked. I couldn't sleep. Colin blamed himself. Rachel cried every night for a week. 7 days after Jonah disappeared, I got a call at 3:12 in the morning. It was him. He said, totally calm, "Hey, I'm outside. Can you let me in?" He sounded normal. No urgency, no fear, like he'd just been on a walk. I opened the door, and there he was, in the same clothes he'd worn on the hike. Dirty, sure, but no worse than if he'd been out for a couple of hours. No frostbite, no injuries, no sign of hunger or exposure. We all gathered the next day. Rachel, Colin, myself, and him. He told us he had no memory of anything after taking a shortcut to get ahead on the trail. He said he slipped, hit his head, and must have gotten disoriented. I guess I wondered until I found a road, he said. Only he didn't look disoriented, or injured for that matter. He looked rested, calm, too calm. Over the next few weeks, Jonah changed, not in huge, dramatic ways, in subtle ones. He stopped blinking as much. He used to clear his throat constantly. He no longer did that. He never used contractions anymore. I do not know. I will check. I cannot recall. Instead, he used weird, robotic speech. He'd stare a beat too long when you made eye contact, like he was remembering to do it. One night, Rachel whispered to me after he left our apartment, "That's not Jonah." I wanted to laugh it off, but I couldn't, because I had been thinking the same thing. Colin finally broke. He went through Jonah's hiking GoPro, which search and rescue had recovered with the rest of our gear. Jonah always wore it on his chest strap. Most of the footage was normal. Trees, dirt, Jonah's boots. But then, about an hour before we last saw him, the video cuts. No transition, just static, then black for a solid 45 minutes. When the footage resumes, it shows Jonah standing completely still in front of the fire tower, looking directly into the lens. His eyes were wide. He didn't blink once. The background was perfectly silent. There wasn't even any wind. He didn't speak, but there was a faint sound, like whispering, layered voices overlapping and fast, almost like reversed audio. Colin tried to isolate it, but it only got worse. The more you adjusted the volume, the more it sounded like your own voice, whispering things you didn't want to hear. He deleted the file. He said it felt like it was watching him back. Jonah's parents informed the authorities that he had turned up as soon as he got home, and when he spoke with his mother, she said she thought he was in shock. She wouldn't listen when we told her that there was something wrong with him, so we decided to tell the police. Of course, they laughed at us and agreed that he was probably in shock. Jonah still texts us, still comes around, still smiles, but none of us are really talking to him anymore. And sometimes, late at night, I think about how calm he was, how clean his clothes were, how his boots had no mud on them when he came back. It was like he never walked out of the woods at all, but rather something else did. This happened last August, and I still can't talk about it without getting goosebumps. I haven't even told my brother everything. I'll try to keep it short, but there's a lot. So, my brother Dave and I go backpacking every summer. Nothing crazy, just a week or so in a remote area, off-grid. Last year, we picked up a lesser-known part of the Rockies in Colorado. I won't say exactly where, because I don't want anyone trying to find what we found. The trail that wasn't on the map. On the third day, we found a trail that wasn't on our topo map. Really narrow, overgrown, but clearly man-made. Stone steps in some places, old wooden markers nailed to trees, all faded. It looked long abandoned. We figured, hell, maybe it was an old ranger route or a fire road. We had food, water, and time, so we followed it. It wound steeply uphill into dense forest. The air got cooler, quieter. Not a bird, not a squirrel, just stillness. Around 4 p.m., we came to a flat clearing with a perfect ring of stones for a fire pit, freshly arranged. That was the first thing that felt off. The stones weren't weathered. They were clean, like someone had just set them there. We looked around. No tent, no gear, no footprints, but the grass inside the ring was flattened like someone had sat there recently. Dave wanted to keep going. I didn't. I felt watched, but I didn't say anything. I didn't want to be the one who chickened out. We set up our tent at the edge of the clearing, made a small fire, and tried to relax. That night, I woke up sometime past midnight. No idea why, just a jolt of cold dread in my gut. That's when I heard it. Crunch, crunch. Something walking around the perimeter of our tent. Heavy footsteps. Slow, deliberate. I thought it was a bear at first, until it stopped right by my side of the tent, and then whispered, "You found my trail." I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I couldn't. I just stared at the nylon wall, expecting claws or a knife to rip through it, but nothing happened. After a few minutes, the footsteps continued, away from the tent, deeper into the woods. I whispered to Dave. He was dead asleep. In the morning, I pretended I hadn't heard anything, but I couldn't ignore what we found. All around the fire pit, carved into trees, were symbols, not letters, not anything I recognized. Jagged spirals, overlapping triangles, a kind of crude stick figure with no head. Dave thought they were from kids or bored hikers, but the cuts were fresh. The bark still curled at the edges. We packed up fast and didn't talk much. We just kept walking. The trail twisted deeper than we expected. It didn't show up on GPS. Eventually, we had no idea where we were. And then, around dusk, we found another clearing, identical to the first. Same stone ring, same flattened grass, same trees, same carvings. It was like we had walked in a circle, except the sun had moved, and our footprints weren't there. Dave thought we'd gotten turned around. I wanted to scream. I knew this wasn't the same spot. It couldn't be. The trail had only gone one way. That night, we didn't sleep. At some point, I looked out of the mesh window of the tent. There was something at the fire pit. Not a person. Too tall, too thin. It was like it was made of branches and cloth. It didn't move like a person. It twitched, like stop motion. It stood over the fire pit like it was waiting for something. Then, it turned its head, and even though it was pitch black and featureless, I swear it looked right at me. I shut my eyes and waited for morning. At dawn, everything looked normal again. No figure, no marks in the grass. Dave said he had a nightmare about something watching us. I didn't tell him what I saw. I just told him we needed to leave now. We never found the original trail again. There was no sign of it. It took us almost 2 days to bushwhack our way back to the main path. The weirdest part, when I got home, I checked satellite images. The clearing's coordinates. There's nothing there. Just trees and dense forest. There's no trail, no gaps. I haven't gone camping since, not even in my own backyard. I still have dreams where I'm walking in the woods, and suddenly everything's silent. And I know I found the trail again, and sometimes, just before I wake up, I hear a voice like the one I heard on that trail. I've never shared this, but after what happened last summer, I can't stop thinking about it. I feel like getting it out might help. Maybe someone's experienced something similar. I don't know. Last July, my girlfriend Maya and I went camping deep in the Bridger-Teton National Forest in Wyoming. We're both experienced with the outdoors. This wasn't our first backcountry trip. We planned to stay 5 days, completely off-grid. We didn't even tell anyone exactly where we were going. I kind of regret that now. Everything was fine the first day. We hiked in about 6 miles, found a quiet spot beside a creek. It was perfect. Around 2 a.m., I woke up to a sound I couldn't immediately place. Soft, deliberate scratching on the side of our tent, right next to my head. Not wind, not a branch. It was rhythmic, like fingernails dragging across the fabric. Scratch, scratch, scratch. I froze. After about 30 seconds, it stopped. I unzipped the tent and shone my flashlight outside. Nothing. Just trees and darkness. No animals, no breeze. Maya stayed asleep. I didn't sleep much after that. The second night, the scratching came back. This time, Maya heard it too. We both sat up. It started on her side of the tent now. Slow, methodical, right where her shoulder was pressed against the wall. Scratch, scratch, scratch. She whispered, "Is that an animal?" I shook my head. It's too steady, too human. Then it moved. The sound dragged around the tent toward the door. Not footsteps, just the scratching, circling us. It It stopped after a few minutes, and again, nothing was there in the morning, except for a small pile of what looked like bark shavings near where the sound had started. I checked every tree nearby. No sign of claw marks, no tracks, nothing. The third night, the scratching started before we even went to sleep. It was like it was waiting for us. We lay in our sleeping bags, not speaking, just listening. At one point, the scratching was so loud it felt like it was right between us, like it was trying to get in. Then, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. That's when we heard it. A voice so quiet, it was almost part of the wind. Are you scared yet? I don't remember grabbing Maya's hand, but I know I held it until dawn. We were planning to leave, but Maya insisted on checking the creek one last time. She said maybe we were just spooked, letting our nerves get the best of us. When we got back to the tent, we found something new. 3 smooth stones had been arranged in a triangle, right in front of the tent flap. Each one had deep gouges carved into it, scratches, parallel lines, like someone had been dragging their nails or a blade across the surface for hours. We left a few unpacked items behind and just got out of there. About a mile into our hike back, we found something we hadn't noticed on the way in. The remains of an old camp. The fire pit was half buried, the tarp rotting, a broken lantern left behind, and bones. At first, we thought animal, but then Maya picked up a jawbone, and it was unmistakably human. We reported it when we got back to town. A ranger told us it might have been a missing hiker from a few years ago. They said animals probably dragged the bones there, but no animal made those scratches. Not on our tent, not on the stones. And sometimes, God help me, I still hear that sound in my dreams. Scratch, scratch, scratch. This story takes place around 2016. My friends Gina, Sabrina, and I were around the ages of 17 to 18 years old. During the early evening, we were riding my golf cart around the neighborhood. I was driving, Gina was riding passenger, and Sabrina was on the back seat. We were driving straight, going up a hill, and about to pass a car approaching a stop sign on a street to our left. The car proceeds to almost run through the stop sign and make a left-hand turn, but then they saw us and slammed on the brakes. As we pass them, they get behind us and proceed to follow us, screaming at us from out of the window. They were angry because they claimed they couldn't see us, but it was still bright enough outside that headlights weren't needed. As they followed us, yelling all these obscene things, I panic and start turning down random streets, trying to get away from them. I get to a new section of our neighborhood that is in the process of being built, to try to cut through some woods that would come out in front of my parents' friend's house. When I took a right-hand turn to try to get into the woods to do so, I ended up driving the golf cart onto a huge rock pile, causing the golf cart to nearly flip with all of us still inside of it. The couple catch up to us, and a middle-aged man and woman get out of the car, and the man starts filming my friends and I. As I mentioned before, 2 out of 3 of us were 17, so we were minors. We tell him to stop filming us while his wife calls the police on us. I call my dad, and he comes to where we're at, and he helps us get the golf cart off the rock pile, while this crazy couple proceeds to continue recording and screaming at us. We get the golf cart unstuck. My friends and I jump back on to head home, while my dad decides to stay there and wait for the police. Gina is driving this time, since she's the oldest of us 3. I get in on the back. The crazy couple see us leaving, and they proceeded to get back in their car and started following us so close that they almost rear-ended us. I was on the back of the golf cart screaming. They stop, and we make it home, and we meet up with my mom, who then goes to the scene to help my dad, so that he's not left alone with these crazy people. The police get there, and my parents explain the whole story from what we told them, and the police side with us, and they even told my parents how psychotic that couple is. Eventually the couple moved out of the neighborhood, and we never saw them again. For a side note, during all of this, they had their 2 young grandkids in the car, watching everything. Alright, so I've decided to share this story in case anyone has had a similar experience. In the summer of 2023, I was camping with my family in Beaver Creek Campground in Montana for a few nights while visiting Yellowstone. The first night there was the most unsettling experience I have ever had. My mother, stepbrother, and his brother had all gone to sleep at around midnight while I stayed up for an hour by the fire. It was pitch black when I decided to snuff the fire and head to my tent to sleep. After about 20 minutes laying in my tent, I began to hear sniffing noises immediately outside my tent. Fearing it was a bear, I was frozen. This continued for a while until I heard the familiar breathing and shaking noises of that of a dog. I relaxed, supposing a nearby camper's dog had wandered. I stopped hearing the dog after a while, but then I heard footsteps walking around our campsite and the sound of a large stick being dragged along the ground all around. Then I was frozen in fear again at the possibility of a stranger walking around our campsite in pitch darkness. Suddenly, an obvious camera flash had gone off right in front of my tent. I was frozen solid in fear. Later, it felt as though an animal or person had laid down and cradled the corner of my tent. I felt a presence for about 5 minutes, and I kept feeling as if something was lightly fidgeting with the corners of the tent. Still frozen, I prayed for this to stop, but then I was forced to make this person, or whatever, acknowledge my awareness of the situation. When I sensed another's touch on the zipper of my tent door, I called out loudly, "Who's there?" My stepdad awoke and called out to me while I was too afraid to open my door. 10 seconds passed when I knew he was out of his tent with his gun. Then I emerged. However, there was nothing there, and after I called out, I didn't hear or sense any movement going away from the camp. All the while, my mom and stepdad have a dog in their tent which reacted to nothing the whole time. I slept in the car the next 2 nights, and nothing else happened. Has anyone had any weird encounters like this in Montana, near Yellowstone, or in general? Thank you for listening to my story. I'm from Hawaii, and I live on the more countryside of my island, where not even Google Maps can tell you exactly where I live. To put it simply, I live in the boonies, and people who don't live by me don't come into my neighborhood unless they're lost. I'm only saying that for context. About 3 days ago, I was in my driveway on my way to catch the bus to work, until a weird catering truck came towards my house and pulled into my driveway. A middle-aged guy came out wearing a tacky aloha shirt that only tourists would be seen wearing, and dirty khaki shorts with run-down sandals. He looked dirty, to say the least. He looked like he hadn't scrubbed in days. He asked me if I wanted to buy some meat or seafood, and I said no thanks, and then he asked if anyone was home. I lied and said my uncle was, hoping that he would go away, but he didn't. Then he proceeded to compliment my looks, saying how I have nice hair, then saying how beautiful island girls are, and how our curves are. Creepy stuff. It wasn't until my neighbor came outside that he drove away. Yet, once I turned the corner, there he was. He would then slowly drive behind me. I felt sketched out and called my mom, who's a dispatcher, and I told her what happened and what he looked like. She told me she'd handle it. By that time, more people started coming out of their houses, and then he left. 2 hours later, I was at work, and my mother told me that she got a couple of other calls about the same guy with the exact same description as I gave, and I was asked to go to the station to say if I recognized anyone. I then pointed out his picture. They confirmed that he is a well-known sex trafficker that they haven't been able to track for weeks. Since then, I've locked my house as soon as my mom leaves for work. I haven't really slept since, and I've been throwing up and having panic attacks whenever I give myself some time to think. I'm scared shitless, and I don't know what to do. He knows where I work. He knows my house. He even knows my face. And it scares me to the point that I've even covered up my windows just in case someone might try to look inside. This experience happened when I was 21, 5 years ago. It's something that has played on my mind since, but I've never talked about it. I went to dinner with a friend from uni, Amy. We had 1 glass of red wine each with dinner. I was staying at her house that night, and by the time we got back, I was totally sober. Amy was in her ensuite brushing her teeth, and I was laying in her double bed on my side, facing the bathroom that Amy was in. All of a sudden, I felt the very distinct feeling of a hand with long nails go down my back. From my neck to the bottom, it felt like a real hand. I could feel the long nails of all the fingers, and it tickled in the same way a person's hand would. I spun around in shock and faced the other side of the bedroom, and for a split second, I saw a tall, middle-aged man facing me, with his eyes boring into mine. It was the most uncomfortable, unnatural thing I've ever felt. He was perfectly aligned with the far wall of the bedroom. I saw him about 5 meters away, so no explanation for the human hand scratching down my back. I was crying and shouted for Amy, even though she was just next door. I told her what happened, and then she started crying. I asked her why, and she told me that she felt like someone had been watching her from the corner of her room for months. She even showed me texts to her boyfriend where she told him she was struggling to sleep because she felt like she was being watched. A well-known male serial killer, in London at least, that preyed on young men used to live 2 doors down from Amy's house, and I didn't know this until I looked it up after. It's taken me years to process this because of how real it was. I felt the hand scratch me. I saw the man. This stuff is real. For a bit of backstory, my husband and I live in an apartment complex with our dog and cat. There is a forest trail behind our complex that leads to a park where we take our dog. It was a weekday, and I was taking our dog to take a pee while I was on my lunch break. We took the parking lot to the trail, right behind the trash compactor for our apartment complex. This trail is usually empty, so walks don't get interrupted with other people, and the dog can do his business with minimal distractions. It's very scenic. We have come across owls, bald eagles, squirrels, and the like. The wind goes through the pine trees, and we can occasionally hear cars go by on the main road ahead. It didn't take me long to realize something was different on this day, though. We had gone down the trail and stopped at the main road, turned around, and started to head back home. The wind seemed to suddenly stop just then, and I couldn't hear the birds that were so loud just a moment ago. It was almost like the silence was loud. That's when I saw it, and I had already walked past it. A man laying on his back 10 feet away in the ivy. Honestly, it didn't register to me that this was a person at first. So I stopped. I turned around. His eyes were open, his teeth were broken, and he was missing the back of his head. Now my dog is spooked and somehow wiggled out of his harness. This man was dead. The 911 operator asked if I had a defibrillator in my apartment that I could go grab and come back. I said no, but that he was definitely deceased. She asked again, "Are you sure? Please check." And that was the first time I was ever made to touch a corpse. I relayed back, "No, there's no pulse. He's missing most of his head." As I backed away, I could see copious amounts of blood I hadn't noticed at first. It was soaked into the earth beneath him. While waiting for the cops to arrive, I noticed he had a box next to him. This must have been the box he brought his weapon in. He had his glasses neatly folded, and had placed them on top of the weapon box. He looked no more than 50, and I will never go into the woods again. Hey everyone, I'm new to posting here, but after reading other stories, I decided it's finally time to share mine. This is something that happened when I was about 12 years old. I don't usually talk about it because people either don't believe me or just don't care, but it's something that stuck with me for years. So it was during summer break. My cousin was staying at my house because he had broken his knee and needed help getting around. He was a little older than me, but we were really close. We'd stay up all night playing video games, eating junk food, and just doing typical guy stuff. One night, I was in my room playing video games by myself. My cousin was in the living room. I'm not sure what he was doing, but I know we were the only ones home. It was getting late, and I was just about to shut everything down and go to sleep when I saw something. Something started crawling toward me. It looked human, but not quite. It was all messed up, deformed. The way it moved didn't seem right at all. It made these weird noises I can't even describe. At first, I thought it was my cousin playing some kind of sick prank, until I remembered. His leg was broken. He couldn't crawl like that even if he wanted to. That's when I absolutely lost it. I ran out of that room so fast, I didn't even look back. I told my cousin what I saw. He didn't really believe me, but I could tell he was creeped out too. After that, I refused to sleep in my room for at least a week. I crashed on the couch in the living room and kept the lights on. I ended up living in that house for another 6 years. Nothing quite like that ever happened again, but that room never felt right. I always had this weird, heavy feeling when I was in there, like I was being watched. I don't know what I saw that night, and I honestly don't care if people believe me or not. I know what I experienced, and to this day, I still get chills thinking about it. I've moved since then, but every now and then, I get scared that something like that might happen again. Has anyone ever experienced something similar? Or does anyone have any advice on how to deal with this kind of thing? I still get freaked out sometimes, and I don't really talk about it with anyone in real life. Thanks for listening. This happened years ago when I was in my early 20s. I just gone through a breakup and moved to live with my sister in the city. I wasn't too familiar with the area yet, as it is a big city, so I often got turned around when I went out on my own. Back then, I had a 1980 300D Benz. It was my first car that my dad had gotten me, an antique that was kept in garage condition, but with one caveat. It had no working AC, and leather seats to boot. So you can imagine driving during the summer in this subtropical climate was pretty brutal. I'd gone out to some shops that day and was headed back home, flustered a bit by the fast-paced nature of downtown and ready to be out of the sweltering heat. I mistakenly took a left a few streets early. I thought this would connect to the main road, but it in fact did not. I drive to the end of this residential street, lined with big, fancy houses. This must be the rich part of the city, I thought. Though living in a gentrified area means even the upscale houses are still essentially in the hood. Everything's just blended that way. I make it to the end and realize the turn at the stop sign is an on-ramp to a major freeway that I'm definitely not trying to get on. Fuck. I pull to the side of the street by the curb in front of what looked like a kind of run-down apartment complex. It's weird and random how it's situated among these fancy houses, I thought. I began trying to call my sister, and she wasn't picking up. Suddenly, I see a guy emerge from the complex, a white guy in his mid-30s. He looked a little shady, like he might be strung out on something. I don't know, he just had that look. He headed straight towards me. I was instantly wary of him, but was a little distracted trying to call, then text my sister. He approached my window, which was down because of the heat, and he started asking me a bunch of questions. What was I doing out here? Was I lost? He kept trying to get me to put my address in his phone's GPS to help me, but I wasn't having it and politely declined. I mistakenly told him, yes, I am lost, and that I'm trying to reach my sister. Dumb, I know. I wasn't as on guard as I should have been, being young, dumb, distracted, not to mention it being midday. I guess my defenses were down. So, I'm trying to reach my sister over and over, and this guy is still trying to chat me up. I'm all but ignoring him, trying to be somewhat polite, but really not in the mood for a chat. He then offers me a bottle of water, and I said no, I'm okay, thank you. But he insists on getting me one. Before you know it, he's off to retrieve said bottle of water. I'm like, yeah, okay dude, whatever. I ring my sister again, and she finally answers. I start telling her I'm lost and what side street I'm on and whatnot. And then the guy reemerges at my window with what was supposed to be a bottle of water. Not that I intended to drink anything from this man anyway, but I shit you not, he passes me a big skull mug, like the creepiest cup, made to look like a human skull wouldn't raise any alarms. My sister is in my ear as he passes me this cup, and I look down into it. Where are you? Who is talking to you in the background? In the cup, I could plainly see there was some kind of chalky powder floating around in it, and it had this strong smell of like almonds or bananas. I calmly just passed it back to him and floored it, whipping my car in a donut, almost hitting him. I basically peeled out in his ass, and as I sped off, he slapped the shit out of my driver door. I headed back home with the help of my sister's directions. When I get home, I noticed this guy had hung a lighter wrapped in a ribbon off of my door lock button. It had a bunch of crazy, nonsensical shit scrawled all over it in Sharpie. This obviously freaked me the fuck out. Nothing more ever came of it, but to this day, I think of just how badly that could have gone had I taken his weird banana-scented skull cup concoction, or even just hung around a minute longer. I still wonder what his intentions were, hanging that lighter off of my window. Maybe it's just the work of a mentally unstable, albeit harmless man. Maybe worse. I'm glad I never had to find out. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed that. If you have a scary story you'd like me to read on the channel, please send me an email or post it to my subreddit. You can find details of this in the video description. It's the stories that make this, and this is the best way to ensure variety in the stories I share. Thank you all for listening, and a special thanks to my channel members and patrons who now have special access to ad-free videos and other behind-the-scenes content. Once again, thank you guys for listening. Have a great night.